Hi everyone, and welcome back to the In the Moment magazine podcast. I'm Sarah Orme. We've all picked up a self-help book at one point in our lives. I don't know about you, but I tend not to stick to them for very long. But what if you really tried to live by them? That's exactly what journalist Marianne Power did over the course of a year. She tried to live her life by a different self-help book every month, and she's written a book about her experiences called Help Me. Hi, Marianne.
Hello.
So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to go straight in with the obvious question, which is why?
I know. Why do this crazy thing? Like you, I was always reading a lot of self-help books. Like a friend gave me my first self-help book when I was 24. But I'd always read these books and never did anything they told me to do. I would read them and kind of fantasize about how great life would be if I got up at 5 o'clock to meditate and did affirmations and, you know, was this Zen perfect person. But I never followed the advice. And then by the time I was in my mid-30s, I was 36 and was quite unhappy. I was technically, you know, had a good job and a nice enough life on paper, but was, quite lost and unhappy. And all my friends were moving on and having babies and buying houses, and I wasn't doing that. What I was doing was drinking a lot and watching a lot of Kardashians and reading a lot of self-help. And so one hungover Sunday, I was reading self-help and I just had the idea that enough reading these books, I had to actually do what they told me to do. And I thought I'd give myself a year to literally reboot my whole life, and I'd take a different book every month that would address different areas of my life, so men and money and worrying. And I would follow all of the advice and to see if self-help helped. And I honestly thought that by the end of the year, I'd become this perfect person. That's what I thought would happen.
You had like a vision of how it would be.
I did. I would just wake up and I would be all happy every morning, and I'd kind of swan around London looking fabulous, and I would be productive and rich and nothing would ever bother me. I thought self-help would do that for me.
And what did your friends and family think of this? I mean, I know you mentioned your mum in the book.
Yeah, mum's in it quite a lot. So my mum is a 70-year-old woman who grew up on an Irish farm. So she's about as far from the Oprah generation as it's possible to get. So mum's response was that most people would say my life was already very good. And I said, I just want to be happier. And she said, no one can be happy all the time, Marianne. It's not real.
That sounds much like something my mum would say, to be honest.
And she worried it would make me all American. And I said, what do you mean by that? So she said, happy. People don't like that, Marianne.
I think it's that people don't like fake happiness.
It's
true. Got to be genuine.
Yeah, that's true. And so mum was just quite, I think, confused by what I was doing, because it was, you know, she's not a navel-gazing person. She's a just get on with it kind of person. And on my year, I was doing a lot of navel-gazing and thinking and wondering what it's all about. So yeah, mum throughout the book is a good source of one-liner put-downs. And then friends, it was a tricky one because I don't think any of my good friends read self-help, and, you know, they would always tease me for reading books like How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, because they said I was the worst advert for it, and I'd read that book 4 times, and I was like, no, it's really good. I think the problem started with the friends is, you know, they were all supportive at the beginning. You know, they thought it was a bit nuts, but, you know, go ahead, do it, brilliant. Yeah. But then it got to the point where I started taking it all very seriously, and I used to be able to, you know, laugh at my self-help habit and at myself. And then the more I got into this year, the less I was able to laugh at myself or anything. So then it definitely placed tension on the friendships.
Would you say it became maybe a bit of an obsession for you?
Oh my God, 100%. I really lost any grip on the normal world, and I kind of stopped talking to friends because I was too busy reading affirmations and positive statements on Facebook, and, you know, I really did go into it.
Okay, so should we start talking about the books themselves?
Yeah.
So you started off with Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers.
Yeah.
And that one seems to really push you out of your comfort zone. Can you tell me a bit about some of the things you did while you were following that book? I
did a lot. So that was the 1st January, and Susan Jeffers wrote her book in the 80s. So it's one of those books that a lot of people have heard of. And she says that when we look at people who do a lot in their lives and seem, you know, to be really successful and brave, we think they're just less scared than us and more confident. And she says that's not true at all. They just feel the fear and do it anyway. And she says that to be leading a kind of full life, we should actually be doing something that scares us every single day. And so I really, really did. I jumped out of planes, well, one plane. I did stand-up comedy, which was the most frightening thing I could think of doing.
When I was reading that, I thought, oh, God, that sounds terrifying.
It was the most scary thing I could think of doing. I did naked modelling for an art class.
Again, terrifying.
Oh, humiliating. And, then I chatted up men on the London Tube, on the Underground, which... Yeah, so I really went for it. And then I also was doing smaller things like opening my bank statements and parallel parking.
That's one of my ones.
Yeah, I know. And with the big things I did, especially with the public speaking and stand-up comedy, I was totally amazed that both of them went quite well. And it made me realise that I had strengths that I had no idea I had. You know, I was someone who didn't like talking in meetings. So for me to get on stage and talk in front of a room of people was petrifying, but in both of those cases I did it quite well. So I learned that I could do more than I thought. And even with the small things like the parallel parking and opening my bank statements, you get a kind of a rush of confidence from just doing this small thing that you normally put off doing. And that kind of, you feel a bit more in control of your life. And then that actually has a really good knock-on effect into all areas of your life. So I think Susan in the book says that every time you put off doing something, it's almost like you're saying to yourself, I can't handle this, I can't do this. And it makes the world feel like big and unmanageable. Whereas every time you go, right, no, I can do it. It's like I hate answering the phone. For some reason, I always think someone's going to shout at me when I answer the phone. But answering the phone, and then, you know, it's some poor guy trying to sell me something, and I can just say, no, thank you. It doesn't have to be this thing I avoid all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound as though that particular book, it really pushed you.
It was, empowering, exhausting, but empowering.
Yeah, another one that I thought was quite interesting was the rejection therapy.
Oh, I know. Rejection therapy felt a bit more like self-harming than self-help at times, but it was a really good one too. So that's a self-help game rather than a book, and the aim is that you have to get rejected every single day. And the idea behind that is that we all live in fear of rejection, and it stops us from going after loads of things that we want in life. And this game actively makes you look for rejection. And so the idea is you become a bit desensitized to rejection. You know, you get used to it and you realize that it's not nice, but actually it doesn't kill you, and you get over it quite quickly. And you also learn that rejection doesn't happen to you half as often as you think it's going to. So I said, asked for lots of things. There was one night in a pub, and I asked the band who were playing if I could play one of their instruments. They said yes. I asked the barmaid, who I thought in my head decided that she was a cow because she was wearing really extreme eye makeup. Horrible judgment on my part. I asked her if I could pull my own pint. Expected her to say no. She said yes. And then I asked to join a group of women in the corner who were just like laughing and seemed like they were having such a good time. So I walked up to them and said, my friends are boring me. Can I join you? Expecting them to just go, no, you weirdo. And they were like, yeah, sure, sit down. So there was lots of uncomfortable moments in rejection therapy, and then there were moments where actually I realised people are lovely, and a lot of the time the walls that are there between us are ones that we put up, not them.
Yeah, I mean, thinking with that one, is the things that you've mentioned, a lot of them you kind of feel like they're things that you wouldn't normally ask to do. You wouldn't think of asking to do because they're
out of the norms.
Yes, yeah. They're not out of the norm. They're not things that we think are socially acceptable.
Exactly.
Like chatting people up on the tube.
Yes, it goes against every rule there is.
Yeah, even talking to someone
exactly.
on the tube.
Smiling is too much.
Yeah.
They break all the social norms, which is kind of fun, actually.
Yeah. You did a few sort of slightly stranger books. Well, I think strange anyway. Yeah. So there was The Secret that you did.
Yes.
Can we talk a bit about that one?
Yes, so we can talk about The Secret. So The Secret, probably lots of your listeners will know The Secret. It's one of the best-selling self-help books. It's still regularly in the top 10, even though I think it came out about 10, 15 years ago now. The Secret is all about the law of attraction. So The Secret says you can have anything you want in life if you just believe. And it says that thoughts become things. So, if you want to think about naked George Clooney arriving at your doorstep with a check for $1 million, think that, picture that, believe it's going to happen. And according to the law of attraction, it will happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's because you didn't really believe. And therefore, it's your fault.
You just didn't wish for it hard enough.
You didn't have faith that it was going to happen. And so The Secret, the reason I did The Secret, I'd read it a few years before, and I actually really hated The Secret. But ever since when I first started telling people about the project, they would either look at me like I was nuts, or they would say, have you read The Secret? And then proceed to tell me all these things that had come into their life since reading The Secret. So I did it. One of the things The Secret says is that you download one of their blank checks on their website. You download it and print it off and fill that check out for the amount that you want, and you wait for it to arrive. And another thing, if you've got a dream car, then as well as visualising your dream car, you need to go and road test it so that you can feel your hands on the steering wheel. And so I did it, road tested a Mercedes sports car, and then got the bus home. And I had a month of doing things that were, to me, felt quite nutty, but then they also felt quite nice. So I think I'm still really conflicted about The Secret. I think what I like about it is that it gives us permission to actually dream big and to think, what do I want in life? Because actually I'd never really properly thought about it before, because I, kind of think, oh, what's the point? You're not going to, dreams don't come true. And I was probably quite pessimistic. Whereas this book says you can have anything you want in life. So what would it be? And one of the exercises is to do a vision board, which is, when you cut out pictures of things that you really want and you put it on this board, and then again, it helps you visualize it, and somehow it will then apparently come into your life. Now, The Secret, I think, believes that it will just magically come into your life. But on a more practical level, it might just be that it helps you focus your mind on what you want, and then you're more likely to take action to bring these things in. But I found the exercise really interesting. So when I was kind of going on the internet for things to print off, and I started off printing off these, beautiful houses in LA, and then the Mercedes sports car, and then Elle Macpherson looking hot in a swimsuit because, perfect me would, of course, look like a swimsuit model. And I was looking at all these images, and then it actually didn't make me feel good at all. It was making me feel quite stressed and unhappy, and like I didn't fit into my dream life, and then it felt quite sad that I was putting out pictures of Elle Macpherson, because I'm not Elle Macpherson, I'm me, and how sad that in my version of a dream life I have to be someone other than me. And so then it made me kind of see, actually, I'd so absorbed these messages that happiness had to be success and money and this almost a Kardashian type life, which is so not really what my personality is like. So then I had a proper think, and I realised that what I would like in life is to feel content and to feel healthy and to be relaxed and have friends and family around and time to travel. So then I created a vision board that was much softer and made me much happier when I looked at it, rather than this kind of...
It's like a more real one.
And that was the really nice thing about it, that one of the things on my vision board was like a courgette salad, because, to try and...
It's an achievable one.
So then exactly, to eat healthy and feel healthily. And at the time I was living around the corner from a vegetable shop. So, that literally could be a reality within 2 minutes if I'd wanted it to be. So, the vision board that I ended up with in the end was actually all very achievable and much more reflective of the kind of person I really am. And so that was a useful exercise for me to do.
Yeah, so do you think that perhaps it's because you're subconsciously thinking of what you want that in a way you might actually be more open?
I think so.
Act in a way that's more likely to get you those things?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And your eyes will be more open to things that perhaps you wouldn't have picked up on before. And also the upside of The Secret is that it's kind of fun to let yourself daydream and to actually think positively. And then I think when we are in that place where we do believe great things can happen, we give off a different energy, and then people respond to us differently. And actually it's more likely that, funny, surprising opportunities can come our way, when we're upbeat. So The Secret, I think inadvertently good things can come out of it, but fundamentally I have problems with because part of the implication with thoughts become things is that when bad things happen in your life, you've brought that on by being, your thoughts being on a negative frequency. And that's not always something that is very good to hear when you think about kids that are in a war zone, or,
No, to suggest that you've brought this on yourself in some way is not great.
No. so there's just really uncomfortable bits of that secret which don't sit right with me at all. But it's a really popular book, and I think part of it maybe is that it does allow us to actually dream about what we want. Because as kids, we'd quite happily say, I want to be a ballerina or an astronaut. And we had no self-consciousness about that. We thought we could do anything in the whole world. And then somewhere along the line that changes, and we start to get doubtful and insecure, and then we hide in a way behind reality. Oh, well, that's not realistic.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a bit like I could daydream about being an Olympic skier, and it's a fun daydream, but I don't expect it to ever happen.
Yeah, I know. But then you have to look at Eddie the Eagle Edwards or whatever it was.
So maybe it could.
You see, I think
maybe my Olympic career is not over.
Maybe it is not over. I don't know about these. I think almost anything is possible, bizarrely, if with enough work and attitude, because amazing things do happen in life sometimes. So I think Henry Ford, who invented the Ford, has that quote that whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. So who knows? Like, if you made it your mission, I bet in some sort of bizarre way you could probably get on an Olympic ski team.
Maybe.
I don't know. Or you'd have fun trying.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be part of it too.
Yeah. Well, it's, the taking part that counts, of course. Yeah. So what would you say then? I mean, because you did some very strange things while going through this process. What would you say the weirdest one was that you did?
What was the weirdest thing I did?
I mean, I thought the firewalking bit was almost a bit like culty.
It was. That was part of the Tony Robbins weekend. And Tony Robbins is this sort of 6'7" American self-improvement god who talks about massive action and, making the impossible possible and all this. And he has big events all around the world. And he did one in London where 7,000 people gather at the Excel Centre in East London. And he gets you into such what he calls a peak state that you feel like you are able to run on burning coals. And so that is literally what you do outside in the car park. There are lane after lane after lane of burning coals. And somehow or other, we all walked over them on bare feet. And I still don't really know how that happens. And it was weird. That was, we're in the pitch black of night and everyone's doing this bizarre thing. It definitely felt culty, but I came out on an absolute high after that. And Tony Robbins, he gives you this 10-day challenge afterwards where you're not meant to drink coffee or alcohol or sugar, and you have to go green. Everything you eat should be green. Well, not everything, but a lot. And so for about 5 days I was having salad for breakfast and no more coffee, and doing these kind of what he calls incantations, which are like affirmations but said with your whole body. So I was walking around the park like Rocky, kind of, well, you can do it. It was awful, very embarrassing. And then I crashed headlong into a bottle of wine and pizza. And that's the thing with the self-help, that sometimes the standards they set are so extreme, it's very hard to stick with it. So my flatmate at the time was just like, why do you set yourself up for a fall like this? Could you not just do small changes instead of this kind of everything's going to change? Oh, no, it's not. Extremes.
Yeah. So out of all of the things that you did, would you say that there's anything that really stuck with you?
Yeah, a few things did. So I did a retreat and a book called, I don't know if I can swear on, it's Effort.
I know, let's say Effort.
So Effort by John Parkin. John is an Englishman who, I think kind of had a burnout working in advertising in London and started getting into lots of spiritual alternative things. And I think he ended up tiring himself out by doing all this soul searching. And at a certain point, he came across the idea that to just say effort to everything. And he reckons that effort is the Western expression of the Eastern philosophy of accepting and letting go. And as soon as we just say effort to worrying about our futures or worrying about our weight or worrying about our careers, we relax. And actually, that is when things tend to go much better. It's why the guys you're not that into always like you, or why you quite often enjoy your job after you've handed your notice in. You just relax, take all the pressure off, and then things just go better. So I like his book very, very much. And I don't always do a good job of living by it, but I think it's the truth. I do instinctively know all the stuff I worry about isn't really worth worrying about. And once I relax, a lot of it just sorts itself out. And I also loved a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And Eckhart talks about this voice in our heads that is constantly narrating and judging and comparing and making our lives a misery, really. So he says that when we see people walking down the street talking to themselves, we think they're mad. But actually, most of us are talking to ourselves all the time. You know, we're beating ourselves up for some conversation. Why did you say that? Or why didn't you say that? Or why did I do that? Or we're worrying about what's going to happen next and what's going to happen in the future. And he says that as a result of that, we miss the only thing that's real, which is, you know, what's happening right now, this minute. So right now in this minute, we're having this lovely conversation, the sun coming through the windows, life is really nice. And so I try, again, I don't always do a good job of that, but that to me feels very true. I've spent so much of my life worrying about stuff that never happened, criticising myself for things that are done and dusted, you know, and it's such a waste. So Eckhart Tolle says to ask the question any minute, do I have a problem right now? So always ask yourself that when your head is doing a spin out. Do I have a problem right now, this second? And 99% of the time we don't. And when we do have a problem, say you're in that situation where you're in the hospital or you've lost your job or something, in the actual moments where problems are happening, strangely, they're not as bad as they are in our imagination. They're just a situation that you have to handle. And we usually surprise ourselves by being able to handle things much better than we would imagine.
Yeah. So would you say it's the anticipation of the event is actually worse than the thing itself?
Always. And then the event hardly ever happens anyway. Well, most of the stuff I rehearse in my head doesn't happen. And yeah, it's such a waste of energy and happiness. And he says it's a huge part of the reason, you know, we get sick a lot. So and I definitely, like, I've got a cold again now, I get run down. And I know a big part of that is my mind always going in overdrive, trying to predict every possible thing that could go wrong. And it's a waste of time. It's so silly. And then the final book that stays with me is Brené Brown's Daring Greatly. So Brené Brown did a TED Talk that was really popular about shame and vulnerability. And she says that we live in this time where lots of us think that we're not good enough and we're not skinny enough or rich enough or happy enough or anything enough. And she says this feeling of not being enough is driving us into perfectionists. You know, we think if we just work harder or if we just go to the gym more, you know, we could feel okay. And she says it doesn't work because human beings, we're never going to feel perfect. You know, even if you get to the perfect size 8 or you find the man or the woman that you thought you wanted, when you get there, it doesn't quite feel like how you thought it was going to feel. And then you set your sights on something else and it never ends. And she says that the only thing that makes us feel better as humans is talking honestly with each other and sharing what it is that we're afraid of and sharing the bits of ourselves that we would rather hide and being honest and open and vulnerable, which I find, you know, hard to do. I think lots of us find it hard to do. And by nature, I'm someone who just wants to go off on my own and fix myself, which is why I was doing this project. But actually, through the project, some of the best bits were the bits where I had these kind of surprising conversations, either with strangers or with the people in my life. And yeah, we can help each other as much as we can help ourselves, possibly more than. So that's something I try and keep in mind. So Brené Brown says that she doesn't believe in the term self-help because she doesn't think we're meant to be doing it on our own. We're meant to be doing it together. So I try to remember that too when I'm about to, you know, isolate or go off on my own, you know, I'm just going to fix this myself, to try and reach out and talk to someone. And that's something that doesn't come naturally to me.
Yeah, so it's not really a solo mission.
Exactly.
You have to do it with other people.
Exactly. That's what she believes, and I think there's truth in that.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the money one?
Yes.
Sorry, the name's just gone from me.
Money, a Love Story.
Money, a Love Story, that's the one.
Oh,
yeah.
This is still so I'm terrible with money. Money, a Love Story is a book about our attitude to money. And she says, Kate Northrup, who's the author, that we all think that the answers to our money problems would just be to have more money. And she says that's not true, because it's a bit like dieting or the way we are with food. It's really emotional. So I would be the kind of person who would win the lottery and be broke within 4 years. I just know I would. And so this book was about investigating why you are the way you are with money and getting real, going through bank statements and seeing what it is you're spending on. So yeah, my money month was horrific.
No, to be honest, I felt a little bit stressed reading it.
Yeah, it is stressful. I know. And it's the one book that when people ask me about it, like my tummy even now is going, oh God.
I'm sorry. No. Should we stop talking?
No, not at all. Because it just shows what
it does.
A big topic it is. And I think people who read the money chapter in the book, they either completely relate to it or they are horrified and they're like, how can you be like that with money? And it's funny that money is something we don't talk about very much. We're actually more likely to talk about our sex lives than we are about our finances. And I'd got myself into debt, and I had no reason to be in debt. I didn't have children. I was earning good money as a freelance journalist. I'm just one of those people that whatever I have, it seems to fly out, before it's even touched my pocket. And so Kate Northrup, there's good exercises in the book in terms of where the attitude comes from. And this feeling of, she says that when you're free and easy with money, which I definitely was and getting a bit better, that you're not free-spirited, you're actually self-sabotaging. You're shooting yourself in the foot. And I think I realised that I probably had quite a lot of guilt around having money when other people didn't have money. So whenever I have it, I kind of will literally give it away. And I also didn't like the responsibility of having it. I think part of me was staying very much like a child, wanting someone else to look after it for me. And so I'd have money, blow it all, and then go, poor me, someone rescue me kind of thing. And she calls that Prince Charming effect if you're waiting for a man to come in and fix it, which I don't know if I was so much doing that. I wasn't necessarily waiting for a man particularly, but, my sisters had to bail me out. I was always waiting for someone to come and bail me out. And it was very irresponsible and immature of me, and it's still a tendency. Money isn't money I could do a whole year on in itself.
Maybe you should.
So maybe that's
maybe that's your next book.
Yeah. So yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I did find it quite interesting though, just because it's perhaps something, as you say, people don't like to talk about very much. No. But I think in your case, when I was reading it, it did seem like there was, going back to your childhood, like there were reasons why you were being the way you were. It wasn't just like that it wasn't you being irresponsible as such. It was just...
Well, but I think we all have reasons. So one of the best is such a useful exercise that Kate has in the book is she asks, what is your very, very first memory of money and how does it relate to how you are today? And so my first memory of money was being in primary school, a child in our sitting room at home, and Dad coming home from work and taking cash out of his wallet and throwing it up into the air and telling me and my sister that we could keep whatever we caught. And I remember, it felt like being in the Crystal Maze. I don't know if any of you guys remember that when you were trying to grab the silver notes, and that's what it felt like to me. It wouldn't even have been much money. I just remember that stress of trying to grab these notes that he'd thrown up into the air and being stressed that my sister was getting more than me and I was messing this up. And then afterwards, I don't remember what was in my hands at the end of it. I just remember Dad saying, only joking, give it back. I know. He was...
Such a dad joke.
Such a dad joke. Ha ha. And I remember being livid that I had been stupid enough to believe that we would actually get to keep this money. And fast forward to where I am today, even though I had not consciously thought about that moment until Kate Northrup in the book asked that question, I realised that I think money is literally to be thrown around and you never get to keep it.
Yeah.
And it also stresses me out, both having it and not having it. Anything to do with money stresses me out. And that was a real eye-opener.
Yeah.
But then, funnily enough, my sister, who was in the room at the same time as me, her memories of money is Mum going mad about us keeping lights on, not switching.
Yeah.
So Sheila's really careful with bills, because she can't keep that.
Yeah,
so it's funny that you have the same childhood and we were in, the same room for that memory, but that was not the memory that stayed with her. Her memory was a different memory. And, so she's much, much better with money than I am. Yeah. So, it's very interesting, the money stuff. Yeah. But it's not like you have these revelations and suddenly everything is fixed. It's also, I've got to still unlearn those habits of just going, la, 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 closing my eyes and,
Yeah, but it's interesting how much that goes back to childhood,
isn't it? And everyone I've asked that question to all has a very specific story about what their first memory is.
Yeah.
And another friend, it was the tooth fairy, just this idea that you could just get money for nothing left under your pillow. And she's been silly with money too, actually, and she always just thinks that a windfall is going to come. Somehow there'll be a fairy. Exactly, a fairy will just come and leave some money. I know.
How weird.
Yeah. And she's a really bright, smart, together woman in lots of ways. But with finances, she doesn't have it together. This is, but somehow it always works out okay. But it is very interesting. We all have such different ways of approaching money. And it's not to do with categorically how much you have or don't have, because, I was earning good money and still managed to get myself into a big hole with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I quite liked in the book is that this process, it actually brought you some romance as well, which I quite liked. So was it the guy in the cafe?
The Greek.
The Greek,
yes. So Rejection Therapy, it was during Rejection Therapy month, and I walked into a cafe and there was a guy there who I had seen in this same cafe a few months before, and in London, it was in the centre of London, and so it's quite unusual to see the same person twice. And yes, so it took me 4 hours, but it was one of those cafes that everyone was just sitting at laptops working, which is why we were there for 4 hours, why I was there. I walked up to him and I was petrified, but I did walk up to him, and we went out. So I don't want to give it away because there's stuff in the book. But
no spoilers.
No spoilers. But it made me realise also I had a lot of things in my head about men not liking me and me not being attractive to men. And a good chunk of the book is spent trying to face some of those fears and insecurities. And a lot of it was stuff that I'd made up in my head, because actually I met some lovely men in the course of my chatting up strangers.
Yeah, maybe that's something we should all try.
It's uncomfortable, but it just, with mostly the limits we put on ourselves and these stories of being to this and no, I don't know. I thought because I'm not like a blonde normal person that no guy likes me. It's just a silly, really, these stories that you create maybe at some point when you're a teenager or something. And so that was also helpful, having to approach men and realise again 9 times out of 10 they're lovely. Yeah.
So one thing I thought about the book is that it did seem quite intense. I mean, sort of not to spoiler it too much, but I know there's one point where you actually sort of become depressed.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that, if that's okay?
No, of course it is, yeah. So I was probably it was probably about 8 or 9 months in that I really started to come unstuck. I think I was putting myself under huge pressure to become perfect, because I honestly did think I could do that I could just fix all of my flaws and become a better person. And I thought I needed to become a better person because I thought I wasn't good enough the way I was. But that pressure was beginning to, really take its toll on me. And I, really did go into just a very black hole, about 3/4 of the way through it. But depression is something that I did that. I was depressed a couple of times before that, in my 20s and in my early 30s too. And in both cases, it's that symptom of pushing myself like ferociously hard. And I used to do it in Korea. This feeling of just nothing I do ever being good enough. And it's sometimes with depression, with me, it's almost like I'm kind of cast with some sort of spell, and everything just seems terrible. That happened in the book, and it sucks. And I hope every time, like I'm really good now. I'm quite, very happy and healthy. And whenever I'm like this, I can't really understand how I get like that. And I think it's never going to happen again. But I think it probably, it probably will happen again. It seems to be that I'm someone who's quite up and down. And, but I think it's why it was after that depression, or coming out of that depression, that I was reading Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now. And I think that's why it had such a big effect on me, because Tolle just describes this, how we can torture ourselves. And so that voice, that very critical voice in the head, he describes it so well. So yeah, I hope I have slightly better tools to deal with these things now, but I don't know. It just seems to be something that happens to me every few years.
Yeah, well, I guess something like the power of now, where it's actually getting you to challenge those negative thoughts as well. I mean, did you find that helped?
It just made sense of them. The fact that he even articulated that this is just something that humans do and it's nuts, because to me it was just so the truth. It didn't, and all those records, he describes them as being like records that you put on every day. There's the whatever, I'm lazy record, you're shit with money record, you're fat, you're ugly, people hate you, you're boring. Those records were going on constantly, and they are kind of actually much less nowadays, but they were always there. And when I got depressed, they had got to screaming point. And the book, it was just such a relief to have someone describe, no, this is what humans do, and it's not true. It's these records that you keep putting on. And I'd never really read that before. And so he says just to observe them, well, not just, because it's not really that easy, but just to know, oh, look, this is what you're doing again, creates a little tiny bit of distance. Yeah. And then he says to be in your body. It's very hard to be in your body while being in your head. So, breathe, all these things that we know we should do, but breathe. Yeah. He does a body scan, feel your feet, feel the energy in your feet, feel the energy in your legs, and it helps a little bit.
Sounds quite meditative.
It's very meditative.
Quite calming.
Yeah. And then also just accepting, like a big part of his writing, and I think this is the sort of more Buddhist idea, is just accepting, right, so, okay, this is what you're like now, and, having to just accept, okay, I'm someone who goes quite up and down, and this will pass, it always passes, this passes. And to take the pressure off this idea, that nothing is good enough. I think a lot of people in today's world are quite hard on themselves, and it's exhausting. And then at some point our bodies or our brains just kind of snap and go, enough already. So I pushed myself to snapping point. But thank God I kind of came out of it again. And it was at that point that my best friend said, she was really worried about me, and she just said, I just want you to get to the end of all this and realise that you were fine all along, that people love you the way you are. You don't need to jump out of planes or run on burning coals. And when she said that, I just didn't really believe it, because I thought I was broken and that I needed to be fixed. And, it took took me banging my head against the wall long enough to just realise I'm not broken, and none of us are broken, and we don't need to be fixed. Just need to go easier on ourselves and accept ourselves, for the good days and the bad days, and strengths and, other areas that we don't find so easy. It's just life. It's all part of life.
Okay, so what would you say then are the positives that you've taken away from doing this whole year?
Oh, so many. So the stand-up comedy and public speaking, like I had to do, no, I didn't have to, I was invited to do a talk in Holland last weekend to 650 people. Now, I would never, ever, 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 ever have done that before my Feel the Fear month of having the experiences of doing public speaking, only to 20 people and a stand-up comedy. So I'm doing things that I would never have done before. So, the Feel the Fear had great effect, that I don't let fear stop me from doing stuff so much anymore. When I feel sick with nerves, I still kind of go, okay, yes. and then I'm like, why did I say yes? But I took so much from that. I did a dating book called Get the Guy. Just, he just basically encourages you to talk to more men. He said, to meet more men, you need to meet more men, and literally just meet them and talk to them everywhere. And that actually was a really big thing for me too. And I think I feel quite differently now towards men than I used to. And the Brené Brown stuff I love, about we're not meant to do it all on our own, we're meant to do things together, had an effect on me. So I try and just realise I'm not on my own. I used to always put myself on my own, and to see that I'm not, I realised there's so many people that love me, and that to just accept that and enjoy that.
Okay, and which books would you throw away, never have anything to do with again?
Oh, my God, Angel Therapy. Angels, I did not get on with Angels. So, there's Doreen Virtue wrote a book about how to talk to your angels. Well, she's actually written 40 odd books about how to talk to your angels. And I went to an event where she was speaking, and I was blown away by how many people were, huge fans and hung on her every word. And I just couldn't get on with it. I think different things work for different people, and I just couldn't believe. And I tried talking to my guardian angels, and to me it felt wrong. So not to disrespect anyone it works for, but for me it didn't. And that was probably the main one, actually, because even The Secret, even though it does my head in, I'm still there's still a kind of a half door open to that.
Yeah, as you say, so it's like I got something.
I
from
did
it.
get something.
Maybe it wasn't what the book intended, but you've taken something away from it that's positive.
I did.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit, just for people listening, what the Angels book is about, just so they know?
Doreen reckons that we each have at least 2 guardian angels. One is your introvert angel and one is your extrovert angel. And your introvert angel is the one that comforts you when you're having a hard time, and the extrovert angel is the one that kind of nudges you to get out there in the world. And there are different exercises on how to talk to your guardian angels, and one of them involves almost writing them a letter. I think it's something called automatic writing. So I wrote a letter and kind of saying, "Dear Angel," and then, your hand starts writing something in reply, and that's meant to be you channeling your angels. So I did that and ended up writing letters and having an angel, I guess, or me replying. I don't know, it was very weird. I don't know how to explain it. But it's about getting in touch with your angels, who she says are a source of guidance and wisdom. And there's actually lots of people who believe that there were guardian angels that stepped in and stopped car crashes or intervened at some period in their life. And but for me, I couldn't quite get there with the help of and then she also breaks down, there's lots of different archangels that have different purposes, which I now can't remember, but one of them is good for finding lost keys and also helping your broken laptop, and another one, she says, you can ask for help when you're on a long line at a queue. And
I mean, finding keys, I think,
do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, if it helps you remember.
If it helps, exactly. No, and who knows? I mean, whatever does help you figure stuff out or feel supported and helped, because, throughout my year, there were times when I did start to trust that there were bigger things than I understood, so I probably by the end didn't have a problem sort of thanking the universe for something, but I still didn't like angels. But maybe it's the same thing. It's just a different word and a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a few of the books that you've mentioned or looked at, they seem to be almost saying the same thing. There's definitely universal messages there.
Yeah, and I think with Eckhart Tolle and Effort, there's, and also You Can Heal Your Life, which was Louise Hay I did at the end. This idea that, yes, there are bigger things going on and that the world is a benevolent one, and that if you trust in good, then good things happen. And I suppose that's part of the message of what is behind a lot of religions, this having faith. And sometimes I do believe that there are bigger things and that the world is good and that somehow everything will happen how it's meant to. And sometimes I don't believe in that. But I know that I feel better when I do believe that. It's a nice feeling. Yeah.
So would you say that this whole thing has left you more open to trying new things?
Yeah, definitely. And open to more spiritual ideas, which sometimes my head kind of can get on board with, sometimes it can't. But yeah, since this I'm reading a lot more, much more Buddhist, Eastern kind of ideas. And yeah, I'm open. But then sometimes I'm very closed again. I go, no, it's all nonsense. I don't know.
Depends on the day, maybe.
Depends on the day, yeah, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And can you tell everybody where they can get your book?
Well, it comes out on the 6th of September, and it'll be available everywhere. Waterstones, Amazon, your local bookshop. Yeah.
All good bookstores.
All good bookstores, yes. Yeah.
And to everybody listening, we hope you've enjoyed it. And of course, this will be in the magazine as well, so do look out for it. And we'll be back again very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to find out more about Marianne's year of self-help, there'll be a feature in the Moment issue 18, which goes on sale in the UK on the 16th of October. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd really love to hear what you think, so please get in touch with us. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on iTunes. We do read all of them. Or you can get in touch with us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at In the Moment Mag, or you can drop us an email, and our email address is calmmoment@immediate.co.uk.